Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mamluks. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-hosts, Sheikh Amir and my man Maheen. Sheikh, before we get the show started, let's talk about your attire.
My tire, I have a spare tire in my car.
No, your attire is not, I was expecting you to be wearing like a black vest, white kurta.
Yeah, I
not at the show.
I was out and about, so I couldn't be
Black turban
in the way that you wanted me to be. So I'm in this attire.
Is that American Eagle? AE?
Oh, mashallah, Sheikh is spending some coin.
Not really.
On the latest brands.
I told Sim before I came on the show, any store I go straight to the clearance rack, and that's where I buy from.
Really?
Got on the clearance rack. Anyways.
I'm very humble of you.
Thank
Maulana Mulvi Sheikh Amir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have to address you as Maulana from now on.
No, you don't. Let's talk about Maheen from now on. Hey, what's going on, Maheen? How you doing, brother?
I just got back from the state of Michigan.
Stuckville, state of Michigan. The same guy, I told him if I came to his house with a University of Michigan sweatshirt, he would not allow me to enter his home and he would do dua against me.
It might be Asabiya, but I don't really care.
Allah protect all of us. Anyways, gentlemen.
Folks, before we get the show started, help us out on patreon.com/themadmamluks. Alternatively, you could go to themadmamluks.com/donate and help us out through PayPal. This show entirely runs on your contributions alone. We don't get any money from YouTube. YouTube has demonetized us completely. That's a whole nother subject for a different day, but we rely on your support. Thank you so much to all the patrons and everyone who contributes every month, but in whatever way they can. We really appreciate to our core. Thank you so much. The show today is about the Taliban. I mean, there's no other way to kind of introduce the show because it's on top of everyone's minds, and it's on every WhatsApp group and social media discussion board. Everyone's trying to figure out how they should feel about it, and it's confusing.
Afghanistan, and it happens to be Taliban is a big story within Taliban. You know what I'm saying?
What's wrong with the way I said Afghanistan?
No. It's about the Taliban.
You said Taliban.
Taliban?
It's not about the Taliban. It's about Afghanistan. It happens to be Taliban is in Afghanistan right now.
Yeah, the Taliban took over Afghanistan.
Yeah, man.
Taliban 2.0.
Yeah.
They're reformed now, brother.
Yeah.
Did you see the press conference today?
I did.
Okay, well, we have some guests too. So it's kind of irresponsible for us to just do our political commentary regarding this. So we brought some people on, native Afghans. Right?
One's a native Afghan.
One of them is a native Afghan. One's a black dude.
This should be an interesting show because, first of all, Brother Ibrahim, you can follow him on Twitter at Red Pill Muslim. Man, if there was a Twitter handle, he jacked it. That was the one, man. He should.
I saw that.
You should start the Red Pill Muslim podcast because that would be,
Say salam, Brother Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, Brother Ibrahim is actually a U.S. Army veteran who served in Afghanistan. He's a convert to Islam, so he has a unique perspective there, which I actually don't know what it is, but that's why we're bringing it. This is a complete surprise. We don't know.
We don't know how this is going to transpire.
Exactly, right?
It can get crazy.
And then our other guest today is one of my really good friends from Columbus, Ohio, the best state in America, Nurgul Dada, who is his family is a mainstay. So I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with a lot of Afghanis, and primarily the Dada family. They roll deep in Columbus.
That's a dope name. I know it sounds a little. Some people may think it's cheesy. Nurgul Dada just sounds like a really dope name, bro.
Yeah.
I've met a total of maybe 3 Afghans in my life.
Jamal from the couple house.
Yeah. I usually meet him at the Afghan restaurants.
But Columbus,
I love their kebabs.
They roll deep. My best friends in Columbus are Afghani, right? That grew up with them. So that's why I was really hesitant to have a podcast about Afghanistan without somebody who has. And I think the Dada family, that's unique about them is they've been here for several decades now, but they're connected back to the motherland. Literally, I just picked up one of Nurgul's family members from the airport at O'Hare like 2 weeks ago because he was there in Afghanistan for 2 months, right? So I think they're always going back. A lot of them married back home. They're women off the boat. You know what I'm saying? Like they keep it real. They always tell us like Bengali man, you Bengali guys, y'all let your woman run wild. And he's probably right. But anyway, but Nurgul also runs an institution called Hidayah Institute, which is a nonprofit which serves like the served in Afghanistan, orphan relief, that sort. We're gonna link the institute for people to support. He's got a launch good going on right now. For what's going on, right, to make sure the people who need it the most, the relief, are supported. So he definitely, I think, offers. I couldn't think of anybody else, to be honest. You have a lot of people pontificating. That's why I asked him, and the thing is, he was humbled. He's like, "Why you want to ask me?" I'm like, "Yo, you actually go there. You actually go to the country pretty frequently. Your family members you always have a family member there at all times. Seems like, you know what I'm saying. So if anybody has some insight,
man, thank you for that dope intro for them, bro.
Anyways,
that was pretty smooth, man. Thank you.
And Brother Ibrahim, can you?
I did.
Okay,
you were asleep at the wheel.
No, I was. Bro, come on, man.
Why are you so hard on Sim, bro? You know how many things he has to do, bro? He's a maestro.
I'm fixing the screen. You remember how the brother's face wasn't in frame, and I was fixing that.
Have some Rahman on the maestro. Anyways, sorry about that, Sim, my buddy.
But can you repeat Brother Ibrahim's?
Yeah, so Brother Ibrahim, again, is a United States Army veteran who served in Afghanistan.
But his Twitter is an interesting name.
Red Pill Muslim.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. So is that like the Red Pill movement?
I don't know. Beats me.
We're going to have to find out today.
All right, Brother Ibrahim, before we cancel you right away. You need to explain yourself, bro.
Is it an ideology or is it not an ideology?
You're completely... You've put us in a very compromised situation right now.
It's all good, bro.
We're going to be evacuating.
Bro, we're already compromised.
Faster than the Americans are evacuating Kabul. So, yeah, what's the Red Pill Muslim about?
So, as you guys know, currently when people say red pill, it's about the whole like manosphere and submissive, and that's like Chad, that type of arena, right? Chad. But I at least took it when it actually meant you're actually like awakened, like you took the red pill, now you know what's going on in the world, in society. Like before I was like some gullible guy, the government loves you, they do everything right, and then eventually I had a friend that woke me up when I was in the military, and then the whole red pill thing that just came along with it. So. Oh,
okay. That's more like the Matrix type of meaning. That's not.
I wish it was
exactly.
But he was hoping it would be a lot more controversial.
I was hoping.
We thought you had 4 wives and you had one in rotation. The fourth one.
I was hoping that like Ibrahim was the Muslim version of Rolo Tomasi. No. Not quite, I guess. It's all good.
No. All right. So I remember my first experience with the Taliban. I was in high school. I was looking for, I've talked to our listeners about this a lot. When I was young, I was always looking for a movement or some kind of a savior of Muslims, because I always realized at a very young age that the Muslims are in a very dire situation. And I was in the library because instead of going to lunch, I would go to the library because I didn't have any friends. I was a loser. I wore black clothes and was one of those freaky kids, right?
You were a thinker, yes.
So I remember in 1996, I'm sitting in the library and I'm seeing the Taliban movement taking over Afghanistan on the newspapers. I'm sitting on the couches, just reading about the Taliban. I'm like, whoa, these guys, they seem like they have it figured out. They're establishing a state and they're figuring out for themselves what to their own destiny, basically, right? They're not in charge. They're not a proxy of a Western country. They're not acting as an agent of Russia or China or America. So I was really excited when they came up. But as time went on and 9/11 happened, we saw that these guys, they're a little bit more stricter than what you were hoping. And my thinking was always that a group that is bringing Islam to Muslims shouldn't look like enforcers, like they shouldn't look like a bunch of Maulanas or very religious type of people. They should be cultivated from the people. They should look like the people. One of the reasons why many of us were excited about the Syrian rebels, because they looked like everyone else and they wanted the Sharia implemented in Syria, right? Because they were t-shirt and jeans wearing guys, and they were, some of them were smoking cigarettes, some of them weren't very practicing, but they all wanted Sharia, right? But you see the Taliban, they were much more different. And I wanted Brother Ibrahim's perspective on that specifically, because when he first, were you Muslim when you were in Afghanistan?
No, I wasn't. When I was in Afghanistan, I was not Muslim. What was it? 2 years after I got out the military, that's when I became Muslim.
Yeah,
I was in Afghanistan in 2009 for like 7 months.
Tell us about that. Tell us about your first impressions when you were first there.
Just like any young kid, in the military, what was I? Probably like 19 at the time, 19 or 20. And I was in a combat job, or, MOS, we call it. And, I'm like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get some action. And once again, that's not, obviously looking back on it, war is war, and, everyone loses. So you should never have that type of mentality when it comes to something like destructive, like war. But at the time, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, let's see what happens. If I get to, do some business, then, that'll be cool. But as time went on, I'm like, these are actually like real people, and my job is to protect those people. And so over time, my mind was actually changing and dealing with the Afghanis. Awesome people, beautiful people, just nothing but love. And it got intense at times, obviously, because I'm in the military, and things happen, shootings and bombings and things like that. I guess in that arena, it's normal. But at the end of the day, I felt like, I was actually doing something constructive. I was actually protecting them to the best of my ability. Like my specific job was to look for IEDs on the road. That was literally like my job. So it's like, it's either, I'm getting blown up or they're going to get blown up. Right. So
and how many years were you there?
No, I was just there for 7 months.
7 months. Okay. And
yes.
did you meet any Taliban members over there? Well,
not personally, they obviously attacked us, but
yeah.
I didn't meet any personally.
Okay. Brother Ibrahim, when you first, sorry, not Ibrahim, Brother Nurul Gul, when you first encountered or heard about the Taliban, what were your first impressions? I'm assuming you were in the States by then.
Actually, when the Taliban, this is the first go round when they took over. I was actually in Afghanistan. I actually got married in Pakistan in '96, and then obviously, after the Taliban took over, I had some time, so I did go over there for a brief, few weeks. So obviously the impression initially. I was still young then at that time too. I was around 20. So really it was the main thing that I got from it, at least at that time, was that it was very secure, because before I went into Afghanistan, prior to the Taliban, the news we got here, from our family members back there, in the 90s, it was very insecure. There was just a lot of insecurity. There was a lot of, warlords all over. So, when I went in, personally, it was really, personally, as far as security go, a foreign person coming into a country that I hadn't been, I had left when I was 10 years old. So that part of it was really good, where I could go anywhere and not really feel unsafe. But obviously, as I spent some time there were obviously some restrictions. The good thing with me was, I've always been sort of religious. So I've always had some kind of hair on my face. So they would stop me at times, and say, hey, why don't you have a full grown beard? And I'll say, inshallah, it'll become a beard soon. So, that sort of things, and a lot of, especially when it came to the young, I hung out with a lot of my young cousins and stuff, so there was security, but there was also a lot of fear at the same time. And this is the initial, I would say, I was there in the initial phases when they were taking over, and the city that I was at was in Jalalabad.
Well, what were your impressions other than them, giving you some flack about the beard? Were they treating your family members? How were the women folk, treated in your family?
Yeah. So for us, it obviously, we come from a conservative family, so the effect wasn't that dramatic. But in the cities, especially in Kabul, there were a lot of restrictions. Obviously the ladies couldn't leave their homes without a male mahram attendant. And obviously the education system. I mean, some of that, obviously the education wasn't, the infrastructure wasn't there anyways, whether it was for girls or boys. But, obviously they had a little bit more stricter, views on what age, some of the girls can go to school to. So there was a lot of restrictions as far as movement goes. Now, you have to also understand, and this is where, looking back, trying to assess the situation, they came into a very unstable situation. Very similar to what you had even today, how they came about. So some of their strictness and, some of their force was due to the fact that there were just a lot of instability. And at the same time, a lot of folks had, there were a lot of militias, there were a lot of warlords with weapons. So some of that, they really had to enforce their authority because they knew that, there were other militias, other people that are out there that really only understood force. So it was kind of a mixed feeling there.
Now, as the Taliban were removed from power after 9/11. What was life like under the new regime, under,
This new
Karzai?
transition, yeah.
Karzai, and then later on the different governments that came even after him.
Okay, so obviously I do want to put a disclaimer here. I'm not an expert on Afghanistan, so just so you viewers know. But I do have a lot of experience in the nonprofit work. I've actually been doing nonprofit work in Afghanistan for about 20 years. We started the organizations around back in 2001. And so, I've been doing a lot of work there. I've traveled from time to time, whether it's, and our priority in the nonprofit work that I've been doing, our priority has been, youth development, obviously education, widows, orphans, trying to provide them some aid and support. We actually, last year when I went, actually 2 years ago when I went, I went to one of the first girls' school that we built close in Jalalabad. And, I was able to meet the girls who I believe it was their third graduating class. So I'm familiar with the conditions there and the situations and also the development. So I guess we, maybe, we kind of want to start off with the current situation, just so viewers know where things are. Obviously, I'm in contact with some of my family members there who are in Kabul and also in Jalalabad. Obviously the current situation is still fluid. There's a lot of changes happening as we speak. But the best, thing that happened out of all of this chaos and all of this that's happening today, this chaotic situation, I guess if there could be a good thing, and it's that there, especially in Kabul and major cities, the transfer of at least the security was very uneventful. Which that was the fear, especially around Kabul. Kabul has about 5 to 6 million people. So really, with all of this chaotic and chaos, that was actually one of the best thing that could have happened is the fact that there wasn't fighting in Kabul, especially, and some of the other provinces that fell into the hands of the Taliban. Obviously, there's still some transition going on, but for the most part, I haven't heard any major issues, any major things happening. Now, but people are still holding their breath. There's still anxiety. Obviously, it's an unknown. I know, I forget who indicated earlier, but the press conference that the Taliban had today was actually an excellent press conference. But again, it's one thing to speak and say good things. The actions obviously are going to, we're going to have to wait. Obviously, people have very bad memories, and so there is fear. There is fear, especially for those who may have been aligned with the Americans and other forces. And then obviously, the big thing that the media are obviously getting attention. Obviously, number one is amnesty. Are the Taliban really going to forgive all of those people who had done some harm to them? Obviously they've indicated yes. They're not going to have any revenge, any vengeful, or any. They're not thinking of any revenge. So they're forgiving everybody. And then obviously the other thing is a lot of women, girls. There's fear there. All of the progress that they have made. Obviously, they're kind of holding their breath to see where that's all going to go. Now, again. The press conference, they did invite women journalists there. They're indicating that, they're not going to restrict women from journalism, from education, from working in the government, from working. So again, that's something that, people are still kind of waiting to see. And then the main thing that folks right now are waiting on is what kind of government is going to be formed. That's really what everybody's kind of waiting for, because is it just going to be all Taliban, or are they going to be inclusive and bring some of the people, whether they were part of the previous administration or, other Afghan professionals? Because again, there has been, as I mentioned, a lot of progress made in education, professional work. So are they going to integrate some of those Afghans who are sincere about serving the country? Or are they just going to have, basically like-minded people and just have Taliban government? So that's the main concern.
Usually at the formation of a new government, from what I understand, is that there's a council that is formed called the Loya Jirga, which is representative of different organizations or different tribes and regions around the country, and they are supposed to give the government basically formally to the Taliban or whoever is actually governing. How much does that actually allow for other representation from the various other aspects of the country to take hold or participate in the government?
Well, that's to be seen. I think one part of the Doha agreement was, for a kind of an interim government, and then after a certain time they would have election. But obviously, they came at such a fast pace, which kind of obviously caught everybody by surprise, where they didn't expect it. Even when they were on the outskirts of Kabul, from a lot of the reports that I read, a lot of the leadership from Doha, they told the Taliban not to enter. But then the problem was, when the president left, the issue was that kind of created some vacuum, and so that's why the reports are that's why the Taliban actually entered the city, to make sure there isn't a large scale looting and vandalism and other things that could go wrong. So I think that's the process. They should have that loyal jirga and basically have some kind of official ceremony for handing power over. But again, the question is, who is going to be in that transitional, transition or interim government? who are all going to be involved there.
Sure. So I have a question about, like, you talked about fear. People there is a lot of uneasiness, right? And there's that clip circulating about the Afghan people trying to get on that jet and falling off the jet. And that's circulating. And so people are asking the question, wow, it must be terrible there, et cetera, et cetera. What is the mindset of those people? Can you, like, do you have an insight there? I've also, maybe you could also double up this question. I've also heard that people who are of Pashtun ethnicity will tend to be more favorable towards the Taliban versus those Afghans who may have come from a more Persian ethnic background. They would be more anti-Taliban. Is there any, like, basis to that?
Yeah. So your first question, as far as people trying to get out, this is nothing new. I mean, actually, if you watch any of the migration into Europe and Turkey from Afghanistan, this has actually been going on for the last 5, 6, 7 years, where there's been a constant migration of especially the young Afghanis. They're trying to get out. They're trying to go to Europe. They're trying to go to Canada. So that's, obviously I'm not surprised. Obviously, the situation right now is unstable. So a lot of folks, the images that you see, they're not really sure what life is going to be under the Taliban. So the opportunity is there for them to, maybe get on that plane and get out. So the other issue that, that isn't really talked about is Canada and U.S. and some of these European countries, whether it's through social media or wherever, they made announcements. In the couple of days, Canada said they'll accept 20,000 migrants. U.S. is saying they're going to bring anyone who wants to come. So obviously that kind of even for people who may not have any fear of living there, they're just looking for that opportunity to get out. So that kind of also created this chaotic situation where they're saying, okay, well, if Canada is going to accept everyone and U.S. is going to accept everyone, let me go to the airport and take my chance. But obviously there is an uncertainty, and so that's one of the factors. The other factor is that a lot of Afghans for the last 5, 6, 7 years have been trying to get out just because the situation has not been good for them. There's nothing really for them. There's no hope for them. As I mentioned earlier, I work with a lot of the youth. I work with the schools. I have some training programs there, computer labs, giving them some opportunity. And again, I see that, sometimes they just look at me like, what am I going to do with this? There's no job. What am I going to do? You're training me, but what's the point? Even the people who really have a good education and jobs or training, if they want to go get a job, under the previous administration, you actually have to pay. You have to pay a government official to get a job, and sometimes that payment is so much they can't afford it. For a poor individual, he doesn't have $3,000 or $5,000 of bribe to pay to a government official just to get a job that's going to pay him maybe $150 a month.
Yeah. So I think it's important. A lot of the people who are paying attention to this now, they haven't been paying attention to this for the better part of a decade. The last time they heard anything about Afghanistan was probably in 2009 when Obama was sending more troops during the surge. Or
the visit to the White House, maybe. Those people who pay attention a little bit.
Yeah,
why was Taliban here to visit us?
So they're like, oh, well, I thought these guys were gone. They were, we thought these guys were history. And they were bound to a rubble. And people don't understand that. In 2009, the Taliban had made a really strong comeback in Afghanistan. And Obama announced the sending of, I think it was 10 to 20,000 more soldiers to Afghanistan in what's now known as the surge, basically pushing them back out into the mountainous area. And they made a lot of made up a lot of ground in retaking that land that they lost from the Taliban. So Now, what happened is, okay, well, '09, Obama's thinking, all right, we're in good position now. We got a pretty good foothold on the country, and we can do some nation building. Fast forward to 2014, you're seeing the Taliban. The Americans have been slowly pulling out their soldiers and sending them back home, or just turning down all the activity down quite a bit in the notch. Now, if you know about the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, that America does, they've been doing a lot more targeted attacks towards what they consider terrorist activities, primarily against Al-Qaeda operatives,
But they don't really have to answer to anybody, basically.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want. Jeremy Scahill has a great documentary on this called Dirty Wars.
Dirty Wars, great,
you can check that out. But they turned it down to more targeted wars, and that's what Obama was campaigning on. That, hey, we're going to stop large scale conflicts. We're going to focus on drones, targeted killing, and things like that. So 2014 is when the basically the Taliban regrouped and said, these guys are now vulnerable, and we're going to make a push to recapture many different provinces across Afghanistan. I think they started with the Helmand province, if you can correct me, Brother Nico. Yeah,
Yep.
So they made large-scale advances very fast, and capturing at least the two major provinces across Afghanistan. And then I think that's when the Americans started understanding what they actually made, because the Taliban were defeating Afghan forces that were 3 to 4 times larger than them.
Yeah.
I mean, these were numbers where 1,500 Taliban fighters took out 4,500.
Yeah.
Routes were happening. And that's when the Americans realized these guys, the Afghan National Army that they trained and spent billions of dollars on, they realized, like, these guys, they're not fighting for anything. They have no will to fight. That's what you keep on hearing this in the media, that
They
we
were throwing
can.
money at them, but it was not like they had that brave, or whatever you want to call it, like you said, that incentive and that reason to drive the vision.
So around 2014, this is the Americans are realizing, like, oh crap, we don't have an army that will fight on its own. They don't care about democracy. We've essentially built an army in our own image, what our soldiers would want to fight for freedom and democracy. These guys, they don't care about any of that. They just care about money. And they're noticing that there's large-scale corruption in the various apparatuses of the Afghan governments, and that these guys aren't necessarily really out there to further the Afghan people. There's no, one of the more biggest things, and maybe Nurgul, you can help people understand, is that Afghan's a very decentralized country, in the sense that it's not just ethnically decentralized, but also geographically decentralized. Can you help people understand that a little bit?
Yeah, they are. I mean, obviously, if you go into Kabul, it's completely different than you going out to Kandahar or some of the other Logar or even Helmand. Some of these different cities. So that they are, each of these provinces actually has some uniqueness to it, and they are decentralized. But I did want to kind of touch on what you said about the military itself. Obviously, what happened, there's a lot of finger pointing, but really, if you follow the money, you know exactly what happened. Basically, it was a money funneling apparatus. Basically, you had corrupt American and Europeans, and you had corrupt Afghans kind of joining hands, and they were the ones who really reaped the benefits. And the soldiers, I mean, even myself, I had some family members back there who were in the military. But if you don't pay your soldier, for 4 months, and you're over here becoming a millionaire and a billionaire, you don't even give them proper food. I mean, I know for a fact that a lot of these numbers that you hear, a lot of these commanders put these numbers on paper, but in reality, there weren't really that many soldiers because they were just getting a paycheck. So in the end of the day, if you can't even take care of the soldiers, because a lot of them, I know a lot of them from our villages and some of the other places, they signed up for the military as a source of employment to be able to provide for their family.
Wow.
And so you couldn't even give them that. And then here you go, you want actually for them to, protect you and protect the country. No, Afghans are loyal to their country. I mean, don't mistake the fact that, the army didn't defend, because they didn't really love their country or they're not patriotic. They're patriotic. The problem is who are they fighting for? Remember, it's all, a lot of this is about leadership. And if you don't have the proper leadership in place, what's the point? Why am I, killing my fellow Afghan? Yeah, he may have a little bit different beliefs than mine. He may be a little extreme, but why am I fighting him and yet, filling up this other person's pocket? So that's really, if you really get to the core of it. And I was shocked when I saw, some of those soldiers who put their, in one family, 2 or 3 of them died. And yet they didn't even receive any payments. And I'll give you another example. A lot of these soldiers, they left behind widows.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, we work with a lot of orphans and widows. So in order for us, because we are, it's a registered organization in the U.S. to kind of protect, our status, we need to make sure that whoever we're giving money to in Afghanistan is not a terrorist and is not, it's not falling into the right hand. So we actually require that the orphans have a government, registration indicating that this is an orphan, just some paper, just for us to kind of document, hey, we gave it to this child, he's legitimate an orphan. In order for this child who's an orphan, whose dad died in the military, to get this card from the government, he has to pay the government a bribe to get that document.
Oh my Lord.
So that's really what it boils down to, is that, people aren't going to protect you if you're not really going to give them at least the basic needs that they require.
So if I can mention something, he said something really, really important, I think a part of this whole story. A majority of people that I listen to and a lot of news agencies and political analysts, for this very reason, because of the corruption and corrupt people helping corrupt people in the defense ministry and all these people pocketing money, this was going to be the end anyway. There was going to be no other way. Because the only one who was actually fighting for a cause and didn't have anything to lose was the Taliban. Mm-hmm. Everyone else had something to lose. Everyone else was in a very bad situation dependent on other people. So yes, we heard everything that we've been hearing on the news. Let's just cut to some of that so we can get to the core of some of this, right? What do we hear on the news all the time? We spent $2.5 trillion from the beginning of this war, 20 years, we spent in Afghanistan.
I actually want to get Ibrahim's take on that as a former U.S. Army veteran. Like, Ibrahim, because you were there
let me finish these points real quick, because I actually want to really pick at his brain about 2009, because he was there in 2009.
Sure, okay.
I want to know what that was like for him, because that was like the second part of my thing. But just so we can clear some of the air here of what everyone's talking about, but we want to get to, because what everybody is saying on all the news agencies is the biggest failure. We put 20 years into this. This is what we prepared the Afghan force with. We couldn't even secure a 2-mile radius between the embassy and the airport. Diplomats always had to take helicopters to the airport if they needed to go to Kabul airport. We couldn't even do that. This was going to be the end anyway. So, number one, they say that everybody knew from the beginning that it was going to be a hoax or it was not going to work out. And there's many, many other things. Like, the brother was just talking about like payouts that were given. And we have a lot of people that, even Muslims, right? I hear Muslims say, in the chat room yesterday, 3 different chat rooms on WhatsApp, America went in there to solve the moral problems that Taliban was causing, the lack of education for women. The American troops actually went there for that. And at the same time, many of these American troops, what happened was there was a payout system that was given to the widows, right?
Yeah. And
in order for that payout to be given by the Americans, these same widows, and this is documented, I think the guy's name is Scott, I can't remember his last name, but I have it in my notes, inshallah. He basically wrote a book about this, and he was talking about the payouts that were given with the hand of the Americans to those widows actually had to perform sexual favors to those people to get that money when their husbands died. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So yeah, this is actually documented. It happened multiple instances, and not just like 10 or 100. I'm talking about maybe even in the thousands, right? So we have to remember that America didn't go there because Taliban was not practicing, or Afghanistan didn't have democracy, and they want to have. We can barely have a real democracy in America, right? What democracy are we going to establish? You know, and whatever that means. Everyone has their own definition of what a democracy is, right? So they weren't going to go there as a moral police. There's something really else happening here. There's something really truly happening there, right? So the next question is, someone can ask, and Brother Ibrahim, I'm going to get to you, I promise. The next question is, why is the world always focusing on Afghanistan when the whole world paints it as a backwards nation?
Well, I don't think it's just. I think right now.
Why are all these superpowers?
No,
why did Russia want Afghanistan so bad? Why has America been fighting tooth and nail to keep Afghanistan under its control?
It's a strategically important region, right?
Exactly.
So that region is right now. America really, when the United States spreads its influence in different parts of the world, setting up bases and stuff. It's not doing there it's not like a camp vacation, you know, for their soldiers they're establishing American hegemony around the world, and they're expanding their sphere of influence in that region by setting up bases wherever they've set up bases in the Eastern Russia or Eastern Europe rather. These act as buffer zones from Russian influence. By Afghanistan being established as with American bases over there, they're preventing Chinese influence. Now that's why one of the biggest biggest outcries that you're hearing from right now in the American media right now is from a lot of the Republican neoliberal voices who really wanted Afghanistan as a buffer zone, that all they needed to do was keep a small presence of American soldiers there, and it would have been a permanent way to keep the Taliban out of power and keep the national government up. But I think many administrations ago, in Obama's administration actually, they realized that they just can't keep up the pace. They can't continue pouring money at the rate they are into this country and expect the results that they want. In terms of the stability that they're expecting to get, and they're not able to squish or permanently reduce the Taliban's capabilities, because the Taliban and Pakistan, they basically travel back and forth through the northern part of Pakistan, and they end up regrouping over there, and then they come back into Afghanistan, and they start launching attacks.
I mean, and look, you said something strategic. Look, you have China, through Asia. You have India. You have Pakistan. You have Afghanistan. You have Central Asia. You have this foothold that's in the middle, which is called Afghanistan, right? And that is how much percent of the world's GDP is just in those countries? Like 70%, maybe. India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, percentage. Central Asia. Right, so so the reason why I'm mentioning this is we can't, as Muslims, be fooled and be like, America went in there for the moral cause to bring democracy, to remove Taliban because they're non-democratic, right? That's kind of like on the face. That's kind of just what makes people happy.
Yeah, you got to push the lie with the truth. You know? So,
I mean,
or maybe they'll take a small fraction of the injustices that are committed to further their cause, to say, hey, this is a virtuous cause, this is a noble mission that we're doing. Your lives aren't going to waste. The widows and the mothers of these soldiers, who've sacrificed their lives, they'll sleep better at night that their son or daughter fought for a righteous cause, and that's what America does with every war. And Glenn Greenwald really actually did a great article on Substack. If you guys want to check it out. He really points out all the lies that America put out for this war, and he compared against how they did with the Vietnamese war in the 60s and 70s. And he basically outlined just the constant propaganda and just picking and choosing of various data points to further their cause. So various senators and people within American administrations were just they were there at all costs. They're like, there's no expense is great enough for this, you know. So one of that's one of the biggest problems, and maybe Brother Ibrahim can chime in on what his experience was like. Maybe if he met any Afghan soldiers.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask him too. In 2009, meeting with the Afghan soldiers because you had to meet closely. I mean, you were saving lives of the Afghanis and trying to protect your life and the life of your fellow soldiers too. So, what was that whole entire experience like of, interacting and, having those close moments with them when you're in the middle of a war?
To be honest with you, I would say there's kind of like two areas, if I want to put it that way, or two kind of operations. One, you're actually doing a mission and, like I said, saving lives, whatever it is. But then you have another mission, like actually training soldiers, kind of almost like having them like shadow you, and then you shadow them, and kind of like, so that was like a whole separate thing that I really wasn't a part of. But definitely the Afghan police, the Afghan army, they pretty much always rolled with us, always.
And what was their morale?
I talking to?
What was their morale like? What did they feel like? And what did you feel? Did you feel like there's optimism in the air? Did you feel optimistic? Did you guys feel optimistic together? That's something that I always thought about.
At least from what I took, and I really didn't talk to the soldiers really at all, but I did talk to the interpreters, because we did have interpreters with us. And just the vibe, though, just the vibe being there, and just it seemed that what they were fighting for, it was to stop the chaos in their country, at least from the Taliban side, at least, or whoever was doing damage. So if there's like a bombing in a city or an IED that kills women and children, they're fighting to stop that.
Yeah. So when you heard about in 2009 when you were there, did you feel like, hey, we're making lots of progress and this thing is going to be over pretty soon, we can tell? Or like, what you know what I'm saying, on that level of what was your resolve and your morale like at that time?
Well, I guess the first thing is, when it comes to are you talking about the morale of like American soldiers, or?
Yes, American soldiers and yourself. Like, hey man, the way this is moving, I think this is we're doing something really good, and we're really making progress, and I can see this thing ending.
I would say with most soldiers, they really don't care. I'll just be honest. Every soldier has their own, I guess, mission when it comes to just serving, especially overseas. So some are just literally doing it to kind of like uphold their family name. Some are doing it just to like, I'm really just trying to be evil and kill people and war. That some people are like that, and some people are legitimately trying to help people. So every soldier kind of has their own reasons. From me personally, it was like adventure / I'm actually helping people, so I felt kind of good about. I felt good about it, but at the same time, on the ground, the situation on the ground, 2009, I would say it was definitely not a good year, and I just two incidents where, at least from my perspective, it was not a good year. One was that we had a platoon, and platoon is it varies in size, but a platoon probably, I would say, is about 30 guys, more or less. And they got blown up so many times and injured just so much that they weren't even allowed. They couldn't even do any more operations. They couldn't even do any more missions because so many of the people were wounded. Thank God no one died, but they were just incapacitated. They couldn't do anything. They just maybe had like a few healthy soldiers. So for the rest of the time in Afghanistan, they literally were just sitting at a base, just sitting there. And the second incident was when I was in Coast, which is close to the Pakistan border. And that was always known as a very, very, very hot area, meaning that you're getting action every day. You're getting blown up, shot at. When I was there, it happened too many times. And I remember on the base, they would have a like intercom system, and anytime that a helicopter would fly in with like an injured soldier and they needed blood or something like that, they would like, you know, code this, code that, and you know, different blood types. The whole time I was there, I forgot how long I was in Coast. It's been so long, but I probably was there maybe a month, or maybe over a month. But every single day, multiple times a day, it was just nonstop, you know, code this, code that, we need blood, you know, so soldiers would literally be just rushing over to the hospital, you know, trying to, you know, like, hey, what blood type are they? It was madness. It was madness. And so from my take, 2009 was not good on any levels. You know, at least anyone I served with, I don't see how they could say there was any type of progress at all. It did not look good.
Well, so now you having served there and now hearing about what's, you know, what Sim was alluding to, 20 years waste of, you know, because that was my take too. 20 years of, you know, wasted, like you said, like a lot of because you know, a lot of Muslims have like issues with like the military or like American soldiers, but at the end of the day, you got to realize many soldiers are going there to get it's their only way out of like dire situations. They get a GI Bill, whatever, right? They're getting over there for something. They're going over there to, you know, pay the bills. Who knows, right? It's a career choice for them, and they're not thinking about it that deeply. So you have these American lives lost. You have taxpayer money that down the drain. Like, do you see it that way, or do you think at the end of the day there was still net progress made? I will say this: I picked up one of Nurgle's family members from the airport a couple weeks ago, and one thing he did comment to me was that Kabul is like really nice now, and he was just like, you know, I just hope they don't screw it up. That's all. I hope it stays nice. I hope it doesn't like go down the drain again, kind of thing, right? So I was like, that kind of was an indicator that maybe there was progress made in infrastructure or things of that sort. But what's your take on it? Do you think the 20 years was a waste, or do you think that, you know, there are things positive that that you guys that the United States Army did do well, or the military did do well?
Because I could break this into two parts.
Sure.
Inshallah. The first part is, like I told you before, and you actually alluded on, every soldier kind of has their own personal mission, right?
Right.
And so it all depends on what they're fighting for. If, like you said, if I'm just in the Army for college money, or I'm just here to, you know, for my family name, then they really didn't lose anything. You know, they didn't, you know, it's not in vain. They fulfilled their mission. You know, they got out. They got their money. They got their GI Bill. You know, they have a combat ribbon on, so they're good to go. But for the soldiers who are actually, I haven't met any who are actually invested in actually, you know, trying to change, you know, things there, you know, and try to help the people and, you know, the government and, you know, the army and this and that. Like I said, I haven't met any soldiers who are actually like committed like that. But if there's a soldier, if that was their mission, like, man, I really want to help the Afghan people and, you know, change things around, then, then sorry, bro, it's a loss. It's a loss. There's no other way I could put it. But for me, I more look at it as the people in charge. It was a huge waste for them, and they did it in vain. But going to the actual country itself, and at least my experiences there and watching, you know, the news and everything, when I was there, one of the interesting things about it was different countries, they would come in and they would build things for them. You know, some like Japan would build a school. Another country, like maybe like Spain or something, would build a road. Like there was actually some like roads in Afghanistan were better than some roads in my own city here. I was actually kind of surprised. So I would say definitely on some infrastructure things that big improvement. Education wise, I think there was definitely an improvement. The military, there was a definite improvement. Obviously, the Afghan army isn't close to where it should be, but it's still a very huge improvement. So is it 100% loss? No, I'm not going to say that at all. But for the people who was running the show and think they could just milk Afghanistan for eternity, huge loss on their part. And then for your average soldier, whatever their personal mission was, you know. And I think for most soldiers, they don't the only reason why they will say it was in vain is because we all lost somebody over there. That's the reason. So what did my brother die for? And I actually had a guy. He wasn't over there when I was over there. Actually, when I actually left, he did another tour. He wound up dying over there. And so when soldiers say, why did he die? Just like they feel like it's in vain. It's because we lost somebody that we cared about. A fellow soldier. And we're pulling out barely any progress. It's like, what the heck? But on a personal side, they're not really tripping. So
very beautifully said. Now, Sim, and to my listeners and our guests, please, I'm gonna ask a question. I don't want you guys to take any offense by it by any means, please. But just hear me out because I'm just kind of playing like devil's advocate. Based on the Doha Accords, I'm pretty sure all of us read the Doha Accords. And Afghanistan actually, in February 2020, came to an agreement of certain things that have to be met to the United States in the Doha Accords.
One thing to understand is before the Doha Accords, a year before, they reached out, or the Taliban reached out to him, to Trump, and say, hey, maybe we can settle our differences and come to an agreement and find some kind of a middle ground where there doesn't have to be any bloodshed.
Yes, but the Doha Accords are written out pretty elaborately. I think it's 3 or 4 pages. Yeah. Right? I had 2 separate copies that are slightly different in some of the wording. But so now, based on the Doha Accords, did United States, as the people who are in power, as Ibrahim was saying, did they actually lose? The people, we see the loss. We see how destructive it was. That's why I mentioned the $2.5 trillion. And we mentioned the 20 years. We mentioned all these disasters. But for their strategy and for the plan, was it actually a loss for the United States?
Well, it is a huge blow to the United States right now for leaving.
On the ground, for us people who are witnessing. But to them, do you think that that's actually what the government actually prefers? Is Taliban to be? Because they agreed to everything that... They agreed to everything America wanted. America got them to agree to everything, and they're planning to implement all of that now.
Tell the listeners what everything is.
Yes. So number one is, just to summarize, a lot of the almost like a secularization level of the Taliban is that they said that we're going to keep things, as religious as possible. We're not going to call ourselves a caliphate. We're going to refer to it as just the Emirates. We're not going to, and just on a side note, I just recognize that nobody was referring to them as terrorists anymore. Everyone was recognizing them as Taliban, right? I didn't hear any of the news agencies referring to them as terrorists anymore. It was just Taliban this, Taliban that, right? That was just something to think about. So the next is that they're not going to interfere with the Uyghurs and anything with China. Yeah. There's no interference with Russia at all, even though that was originally no interference with India.
I don't think that's part of the Doha Accord, though. The Doha Accords wasn't met.
Didn't it allude to?
They didn't deal with the Chinese directly in the Doha Accords. They were talking with mainly the Americans, to my understanding.
They were talking to Americans, yes. But I'm saying that a part of America's conditions were to them that they're not going to interfere with China. They're not going to interfere with Russia. They're not going to interfere with India, right?
Well, I don't think they were going to interfere. Meaning, it really depends on what you mean by interfere. So interfering in China means, Americans want the Taliban or Afghanistan to be a thorn in the side for China. Okay, so but the Chinese don't want the Taliban to accept the Uyghurs, recognize East Turkestan as a independent republic, et cetera, et cetera. They want those assurances, and at least from the communication we're seeing from the Taliban representatives regarding China and the friendliness that China is approaching the Taliban with, it seems like they've made a deal with them that, hey, we're not going to
discuss the Uyghurs.
Because if people see the map of Afghanistan, it's like a tiny little sliver that's really touching East Turkestan just by, I don't know, brother...
Hey, if you guys know anything about history, Afghans make a lot of deals with different people. But...
Brother Nurullah, how big is that border with China?
Huh?
How big is that border with China?
It's not that big. It's basically in the north.
Is it like 100 miles?
Probably not 100 miles, maybe a little bit less than that,
Okay.
but it's a good sized border.
Yeah,
it's a
but
good-sized
it's
border,
touching
you
East
know.
Turkestan, right? Where the Uyghurs
Yes.
are. Yeah. So I think the Chinese are very cautious about that, and they're very they don't want Afghanistan to be a ground where the East Turkestan movement gains power and strength and causes more problems for them. You know, so for the Americans, they wouldn't be working on in Doha. They wouldn't be working on behalf of the Chinese. You know, they won't. They're gonna have if Afghans are gonna make their own deals with the Chinese over there. The Russians, they're gonna pretty much tell them that, hey, you know, we're not gonna mess with the Caucasus regions, and we're not gonna be a place where all these different groups will come and launch attacks against mainland Russia, or try to form independent nations like in Dagestan and Chechnya or what have you. So these type of assurances need to be given by the Taliban. I'm not blaming them for it. I'm not. Of course, would I love the Taliban to say yes, we'll accept East Turkestan. No, give the Chinese the finger, give the Russians the finger. We all want that, you know. But there has to be some level of maturity in realizing that, hey, if you don't agree to these things, you're effectively a hermit kingdom like the North Koreans. You're effectively going to be embargoed, and there's going to be sanctions, and all kinds of horrible things are going to happen to your people.
So they have to follow suit right now if they want to survive.
They're going to have to say what they want to hear.
Yeah.
At least that's what time will tell, how much they're looking out for themselves and completely abandon. The thing is, many people say that the Americans will say, stop sending your fighters to Pakistan, and they'll tell Pakistan, hey, build a fence, or they built the Pakistan recently built this very long fence across the Afghan border, and the Americans will pressure them to do that. But it's effectively like building the Mexico wall. You can't govern that. You can completely cut those things down and go freely pass through those things.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the Taliban are comprised of all these various alliances. They're very decentralized, and that's what people in the West don't really understand, is that they can say whatever they want, but they have so many different alliances within Muslims, Muslim armies, Muslim factions, Kashmiri Mujahideen, there's Harkat al-Mujahideen, there's Harkat al-Jihad Islami. There's a couple different groups in northern Pakistan that they have very strong alliances with, and they can't just sell them out. They can say that to the Americans because the Americans just want to hear that. Yeah. And that's one of the things that Trump said after the Doha Accords. Well, they have to. He basically was talking about the Taliban, is that they have to do what they promised us. Well, basically, it was all a bunch of verbal agreements that they made, just giving them assurances that, hey, we're not going to allow Al Qaeda and other militant groups use your country as a launch pad to attack the rest of our interests.
Yeah.
And if in that case, they want to leave anyway. The Taliban, in fact, they didn't have to agree to anything because they knew the Americans were in such a compromised state by being in Afghanistan, at least financially speaking, and so they didn't really have to agree to anything.
So one thing that you touched upon, which I think was very important, is we're not going to let Al Qaeda flourish and ISIS or whatever. Yeah. But one of the conditions, I think, it was that you have to free the 5,000 people in jail that were jailed during the occupation. A lot of them were Al Qaeda, a lot of them were ISIS. So the thing that I was thinking of is, how was that deal made when all those people in jail were known to be what they considered to be terrorists in the first place?
Well, now you're hearing about a lot of these Mujahideen who fought against America being released out of. You're seeing ex-Guantanamo Bay fighters on TV and stuff, and this is because it's part of the deal. It's not like, we just forgot about these guys. We were in such a hurry. No, they just make it look like that. But this is their way of kind of agreeing to that deal. Everything you're seeing right now, the Americans knew what's going to happen. They just didn't see it happening so quickly. The Taliban were told to kind of move in slowly. They knew that the gig was up. The Afghan National Army was going to abandon their posts. As the American army were
leaving, they were taking more and more.
This was all agreed on in the Doha Accords. This is not for many people right now, it's a surprise. But anyone who was paying attention knew the writing was on the wall. The Afghan government, they all knew it was going to happen. They just didn't know it was going to happen this soon. The Afghans, the Taliban basically said, you know what, let's just speed it up. You guys are taking too long to leave. So they just sped up the attack. And
That's the part that was a slap in the
yeah,
face.
so
The speed of
do you
how it
really
happened.
do you really blame the Afghan National Army for not standing up? Why? Why should you fight? You guys already gave up.
Yeah.
You know? So why should you spill your blood for something that
So petty.
is you've already thrown in the towel?
Yeah.
Question, Norval,
So-
I got a question for you. So I've been seeing
Yeah.
a lot of my social media feed about like Pakistan being like implicated as a problem actor in this, right? From what is like Pakistan's involvement? The only thing I can see is that Pakistan, they were harboring the Taliban, so it seems like people who are anti-Taliban are more on that, like also want to blame Pakistan as well as being there. But what's the relationship with Pakistan as you see it? Does Pakistan have faults with, what's the perception of Pakistan amongst the Afghan people?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm glad you asked this. Obviously, we haven't really talked about all the different hands in Afghanistan. We just kind of touched on the U.S. and some of the European nations, but obviously, from the get-go, Pakistan has always been involved, and then obviously later on, India got involved. So, and I have the same thing. A lot of actually, I don't know if you read Yasser Qadi's one of his posts. And then there was a lot of comments. He kind of just, a small sentence about, ISI's involvement, and then everybody was on him for that. So, for us to not, view that Pakistan had some involvement. To what degree, we don't know. If you don't believe that they had any involvement in Afghanistan and with all that's going on, you really don't know the geopolitics of the region. They definitely have some involvement. Obviously with Imran Khan, he's trying to limit, he's been, at least saying the right things where he's limiting some of the activities of the Taliban, and he was the one to kind of bring them to the table. But obviously, they've been, that's where the group started. That's where a lot of the madrasas were, where they basically, grew up and were taught. And especially, after 9/11, that's really the only place they could go and have some safety net. So I believe personally there's still some involvement. To what degree, I don't know. Obviously, the Taliban have to get some support from somewhere, and who's all kind of supported them. But the interesting thing was, the brother was talking about, how, all of these superpowers per se we're kind of giving everything to the Taliban. Whereas if you go back 20 years in 2000, in 9/11 or after 9/11, the Taliban were kind of begging. Remember, they weren't really implicated in the terrorist attacks. Obviously, the only fault they had is obviously Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan, but there was really no direct involvement in those actions, from the Taliban. So the Taliban at that time were actually begging a lot of the Western powers, in particular the U.S., saying, "Hey, look, let's sit down, let's talk. Look, we're not." We didn't do this, and we need some proof and all that. But, so now obviously the tables kind of have turned, whereas, you've indicated, the U.S. are willing to give whatever they kind of wanted, just because they saw that, they didn't want to continue to invest in Afghanistan for whatever reason. But you also have to look at, one other aspect of it is that, there are still a lot of minerals in Afghanistan. There's a lot of resources in Afghanistan. So obviously, China has been building a lot of mining facilities in Afghanistan in the last 10 plus years. India has been there doing a lot of different things, so a lot of, Russia, obviously. Again, as I indicated, you follow the money and you'll kind of figure out what's going on. So whatever deal that the Taliban have, again, I think they've learned, or hopefully they've learned, that the only way they can survive really is to be able to have some kind of relationship and deals with countries like China, countries like Russia and Pakistan, in order for them to do anything. So I think whether they've told China that they're not going to get involved in their affairs with our brothers and sisters there, or obviously in Russia, Chechnya being right up there. And obviously, there's probably those conversations probably already did happen, because in order for them to kind of get to establish their authority, they're going to have to deal with these folks.
Yeah.
One of the ways that the Americans kind of control the situation, even as they're leaving, they're not just going to walk away and say, "Oh my God, well, we lost a war," and oopsie. What they do is, now that they've kind of told or had the Taliban agree to reducing these alliances that they've had, or start breaking away from various factions like Al-Qaeda or whatever other militant groups that are in their country, they kind of get to reduce the influence of the Taliban as well in that, because what in effect that does is they're making enemies of friends who helped them get to where they are, so they kind of manage kind of mitigate their influence. They don't by getting them to agree to some of these provisions in Doha or whatever, that they said that the Taliban are not allowed or are promising not to help militant groups anymore. They're also hurting them too by them agreeing to that, and it also shows like kind of
hurting who?
Hurting the Taliban. They're hurting the Taliban because they know that by the Taliban agreeing to that, they're going to upset their own various partners within the region,
cause dissent amongst.
Yeah, because if they actually follow through with that, they're
even if they don't, just rumor spreading and just amongst people are going to be like, "Hey, why did they agree to that?" Right. That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
But in order to be legitimate rulers of a country, recognized on the international stage, you need these big countries like the United States, Russia, and China to recognize you as a legitimate country.
You're right.
Otherwise, they're like mafia lords or families. You have to be aligned with one of them.
Yeah,
and they're going to be feeding you.
A lot of people that were, a few news agencies I was listening to, they're like, we're surprised. It almost looked like the press conference today that they had. It was almost like a left-wing leaning style press conference that took place. You would never imagine that this is the Taliban. It looked beautiful. So based on that and based on everything that and I mean, just whatever your own personal speculation is and your prediction, what do you think the next 5 years for Afghanistan looks like? Just in your own personal understanding and the reading that you do on Afghanistan.
From whatever I see, I think we're going to see a much more a Taliban light, LITE. We're going to see people who probably implement Islam much in the way that Iran does. A lot of people have a much more degree of freedom to practice Islam in the way they want to, but as long as they're doing the general, I think they've already said that as long as the women wear hijab, we're okay.
We don't gotta worry about like trannies and stuff.
Yeah, well, trannies were always part of society. I don't know if they would have a problem with trannies.
I mean, like like an American context. You know what I'm saying? Not like
he's talking about like LGBTQ movement.
Gender fluidity. 4-year-olds changing genders, and they don't want to have that going on, right, Nurgle? Not happening.
Nurgle, how much of the rhetoric surrounding female or women's rights how much of that is rhetoric and how much of it is actually true, other than the forced jilbab or niqab that they had women wear in the past? how much was it just more of it was cultural and like people weren't going to send their women to school anyway? Something I've been discussing with people. I'm like, I don't think these people, or at least many regions in Pakistan or in Afghanistan, really focus on women's education to begin with. Is that true or?
Well, again, it all depends on where you are. Obviously, this is a big story in Kabul because it's a big metropolitan area, and obviously, you know, you have a lot of, you know, different ethnic groups actually coming into one city that have a little bit different views on life, and then also some of them are a little bit more, you know, conservative. Others are a little bit more liberal. But you know, in general, you know, to be honest. Historically, obviously, after the Russian invasion, obviously the woman education was really dwindled. I mean, before the Russian invasion, actually, you know, to a certain degree, everyone got a little bit of education. If you had some schools nearby, even, you know, my sisters in the 70s, I mean, you know, they walked miles just to go to school, you know, up to a certain grade. But I would say, you know, in the last 20 years, there was a lot of progress when it came to education. I mean, as I mentioned, just in one of the schools that you know, my organization built, you know, we have over 1,000, you know, girls who go there. And there are many others, you know, like that. So those, when it came to education, there has been a lot of progress made. Now, again, the nation as a whole, for the most part, is conservative. So even when the girls got the education, a lot of them still, after education, there was really nothing else. You know, they went to 12th grade, and after that they got married, and that was it. But you know, in Kabul and in Jalalabad, in Herat, in Mazar-e-Sharif, some of these big cities, you know, obviously some of the girls went on, you know, to get involved in the government. You know, obviously to get some kind of employment, to get further education, journalism, all of these different fields. But that's not a majority. I mean, if you go to Khost and even Kandahar and Helmand and some of these areas, you know, that's not the case. I mean, in a lot of cases, the girls are not getting educated. Maybe they're going up, you know, 5th grade or 6th grade, and that's it.
Do you agree with my assessment that we're going to see a Taliban light in the next few years as we see them take power and establish a foothold in the country? Are we going to see something more along the lines of a more tolerant, like a kind of like a Iran type of a state, or maybe Saudi Arabia's type state?
That would really have to be that is something that, you know, I really can't make that assessment right now. It will be really once the government is formed. So within 5-6 months, for me to kind of see who the Taliban are going to embrace into their government, then I can kind of figure out, okay, these guys, you know, this is what they're going to look like. Now, right now it's kind of difficult. Obviously, they're talking the talk. You know, they're saying they're going to allow, you know, education for ladies and allowing them to work. They're not going to, you know, knock on people's door, you know, and asking people, you know, to grow their beards. But again, to me, I think what's really going to tell, you know, how they're going to look is, you know, what kind of government is it that they form, and what kind of, you know, who from all the different, you know, do they include the Hazara minority communities? Do they include the Tajiks in their government? So that's really going to tell me, you know, how they're going to govern.
Yeah. Well, one of the important things to consider also is, as we see over the next few years, when they establish a presence, foothold in the region, how are they going to treat their relationship with their neighbors? Like, for example, one of the reasons why Pakistan has always been helping Afghanistan in the back channels was because India, during the Afghan government, the previous Afghan national government, India was helping Tajiks, anti-Pakistan Tajiks, join the government party. So that inflamed Pakistan and saying, hey, if this is going to happen, if India is going to be meddling in our affairs, then we're going to make sure that the Taliban get the necessary resources to support themselves, because that brings another enemy to their neighbors. If they find a hostile neighbor, like and just a hostile government forming, taking shape into Kabul, right? So it's just many different areas. It's such a fluid region, and it's very complex. It's unlike many different countries because of the various ethnic. Sorry.
No, he didn't say anything.
No, just because of the various different ethnic and geographic makeup of that region. It's a very interesting situation. One of the problems that America had was that they were fixated on how things should look like. Like, they didn't really think about many different outcomes that could happen from their presence there. They were fixated on what they wanted to see. They were, instead of being prepared for multiple different scenarios, they were only prepared for one vision of what it would look like. And that's the wrong approach, especially for a region like that. That's so fluid, and it can just be so temperamental, and it's just dynamic, So that's a big failure in American
I see that part.
thinking too. Many people are thinking, the Americans, this is all planned and coordinated. Yeah, to a degree. Americans aren't like masterminds. They don't know exactly what's going to happen in every step of the way. They've made huge mistakes. They've made mistakes back in the, I think, 08, I think 07 or 08, when the Taliban approached Karzai, and they said, hey, you know what, we'll just let us be part of the government, and there won't be any more, you won't have any problems with us anymore. And they refused it. They refused to include them part of the government. So they made huge mistakes in the past that would have prevented them from this happening,
And just throw money at it just to fix it after that, right? If there's any hiccups. Wow, man.
Yeah, because initially what they did is, they sidelined a lot of the Pashtuns, just because, if you were a Pashtun, back in the days, you were considered a Talib. And again, not all Pashtuns really, agreed with the ideology of the Taliban. So that was a huge mistake, because they allied themselves with the Northern Alliance, and so you have a majority of your population who you've kind of sidelined, and yet you want to form a democratic government. So again, those are some of the missteps that that really obviously are now haunting them.
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the listeners?
No, I asked a question about Pakistan already, so I was just YouTube. No questions, just commentary.
No super chats.
No super chats.
Brother Ibrahim with us still?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Brother Ibrahim, any comment or any thoughts on the actual training that you saw from the Afghan National Army? Did you see them being properly trained when you were there?
Yes. I think one thing that America is good at is training, and specifically the special forces. That's actually their job, right? To go into a foreign land, find that population that's trying to fight back, and train them. And so, not only in that area in the special forces, but generally as the army as a whole, or in the military as a whole, the training is awesome. It's very high quality. But once again, it comes down to the actual person being trained. Like you said, if they have nothing to fight for, there's no morale, then you can learn everything you want. But to implement it and practice it, then that's a whole separate thing. That's a whole separate thing. So,
do you think the Americans made a mistake in trying to create these soldiers in their own image and the way that they want to see? Because one of the things I see with the Taliban and many other fighters, even with the Northern Alliance and stuff, they're very lightly dressed. Like, you see them wearing their traditional garments and stuff that you wouldn't see the Afghan National Army wear. They're very heavily armed, and when you see the Taliban or the Northern Alliance or other groups or factions across those regions or those mountainous regions, they're very mobile, and they're able to to move very effectively, doing their guerrilla tactics, hit and run. Even during the Soviet eras, they would launch their stingers at those those helicopters.
With just a kurta pajama and a Kalashnikov, and that's it.
Yeah.
So is it true that some Americans, like, based on some of the forces, that they have like 40 to 60 pounds of equipment on them at times?
Yes, I'm one of them.
Really?
Or was one of them.
What was that?
Like? Because I actually I was a machine gunner, so I had to carry the machine gun plus my body, my body armor, plus my ammo, right? And the next guy may have all that plus the radio pack, So I mean, you could easily hit up to 40, 60 pounds, walking around, very, very heavy.
Wow.
So that can be very advantageous on the level. You don't have as much protection, you don't have as much resources, but you're very nimble and you're mobile.
Yeah. I think that played a big part in.
And in order to fight the people that are like that, you kind of have to train people like that, right?
Well, because these people they're not accustomed to wearing that much armor, right? And with that much machinery and being so armed to the teeth. These people, they have a rifle around their shoulder and maybe a few rounds of ammunition, and that's it, or maybe a rocket propelled grenade launcher, and that's it.
That's an interesting observation, sir. Allah only knows what's going to happen, man. We can assume and speculate and predict, but
one of the things
nobody knows what's going to happen.
One of the things that I want to talk to you guys about was just, I feel like there's like a double standard. There's like the atrocities that comes from the Afghan national government. Like, we know about all the different types of abuses. I think Brother Nurul Gul was saying that there were some sexual abuses that are happening. Or was that you? I remember was saying there were some sexual abuses that were happening, or favors that were required for these widows to get payments back. But when that comes from the Afghan side, the Afghan national government side, and I'm just talking about, forget about the media and stuff. I'm just talking about our own, like, Muslims and stuff. Those kind of abuses are just like, oh, well, they're more focused on what bad comes from the Taliban, right? And, like, it seems like they're so focused on finding faults within them that they're not necessarily looking at the bigger picture. And it's something what happened recently was, me and my son were watching a TV show, and this TV show had many different complex characters, and no one was clearly good or bad. And he was keep on asking me, like, "Oh, is this guy a good guy or a bad guy?" And I was like, "No, stop thinking of it that way. They're kind of mixed, and they have their own different, storylines." And so I was like, I was trying to tell him, like, this way of thinking of good people and bad people, this is not the right way to think about. There are a lot of bad people in the world, but when you actually, as you get older, you're going to start understanding that most people are probably a mix of good and bad. And we have like a 10-year-old mentality that we grow up with. That same 10-year-old that my son has right now, we actually just run with that line of thinking. And we think of everyone
in a classification.
Classification, good or bad. Like, hang on a second, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Like, people are complicated, and you have to understand, like, there's many different things that define what makes a good person a bad person. And I feel like with the Taliban specifically, there's people have just bought into the American propaganda.
Yeah.
That, hey, these people are bad, and you need to find anything that is confirming that narrative. Anything you hear about it in the media, or maybe there was some rogue Taliban unit that committed some kind of atrocity.
Yeah, and
in war that happens all the time. Your army could be the most righteous army, but even in the Prophet's time, there were people who killed Sahaba or part of the Prophet's army who did something that was sinful in the rules of engagement or the rules of warfare. And people can use that one example and just label everything like that. And I'm not saying take the Taliban side, or I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying wait and see. Like, no one's pointing a gun to you to make a decision about the Taliban. You're in the West.
Yeah.
You don't have to make decisions about or taking sides and deciding who's guilty. One of the problems happens one of the problems that happens is when you take a side on something, you're forced to defend it.
Yeah.
You know, and then you ultimately start defending something that you weren't really that passionate about it to begin with. You didn't have that many arguments to really back you, and now you're forcing yourself to defend either the Taliban or the Afghan national government when you didn't really have a horse in that race to begin with. You just kind of saw a couple different news articles and you put together some lazy understanding of how politics are working in
Which
that
is
region.
the majority of us,
Most of us do this, and I'm just saying, just wait it out. You don't have to say anything. You just, if anyone wants to know about something what your feelings are regarding the issue, my heart's with the people who are oppressed, and on any side.
That's it. I just want
You
justice.
you make an excellent point. I mean, that's what it really all boils down to. Eventually, the Afghans have to choose what they want.
Yeah.
And that sometimes the West forgets that, these people who are there don't really have to accept what you want to give them or what you're feeding them. So ultimately, and this is my belief, like I said, I've been working there. I work in this, I grew up in this country. I mean, I love the United States. If you look at the history of the United States, they had to go through struggles to get to where they are, and are still going through struggles and have a lot of obstacles to overcome. So same thing, if you want the Afghans to actually establish anything that's going to last, that's going to benefit them, they have to figure it out. That's kind of what I tell the students when I go over there, and anytime I have a chance to give us, khutbah in Afghanistan, it's really up to you. People are going to come in here, try to force different ideologies on you and force their way, but ultimately the people have to decide what it is they want. So I agree with you. We wait and see. But again, our hope is, and I pray that the Taliban have learned. Obviously people are concerned because of what the bad taste they have in their mouth. So I'm hoping, and inshallah that's the case, that they have learned from their mistake, and hopefully they don't continue to make those mistakes, and they are a better version of what they were previously. So but again, I believe that the Afghans will inshallah, if they're kind of left alone, they will be able to figure it out.
Yeah. And we also, one thing I just want to add is the good guy, bad guy thing you mentioned, I think is beautiful. And sometimes we take somebody else's bad guy and we just go with it, but it's somebody else's bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. So right now it was America's bad guy, but when they used the Taliban to fight the Russians, they were good guys. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So what made them the bad guy now? All of a sudden, what made them flip to be bad guys now? Was it for moral reasons why you're calling them a bad guy? Or is it because you need them to be bad guy now for your strategy, right? And we have to understand that too. And that's how dirty politics is, unfortunately. It's stripped of justice.
American media was calling the Taliban or many other militant fighters Mujahideen.
Yes.
Mujahideen.
In America.
Female reporters, male reporters, every cross-section of America was calling them, the heroes of Afghanistan. You had Rambo talking about how great the Afghanistani people, there's a clip circulating.
Nurgle just sent me a clip from Rambo 3.
Yeah, we should actually play it. But in Rambo, he's saying that you guys don't take no bleep,
because they didn't want to fight that war. Yeah, they needed someone else to fight, so they had to be good guys. So I'm not saying who's good or bad right now. I'm saying just remember that there's many games at play, and don't invest your emotions on somebody else's bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Like you mentioned, that I think is beautiful. We just, at the end, as believers, we just want justice for people. Yeah. No matter who they are, whether they're Muslims or non-Muslims, we just want justice on this earth because it's Allah's earth, and He asks us to make sure that we uphold justice. That's it. Yeah,
and if the Taliban are those upholders of justice and truth, then we're with them, and we hope that they will do that. And for anyone in the world, for that matter, any side who is on truth, justice, and willing to be willing to carry out that with mercy,
Yeah, I'm just laughing because that clip is so easily cuttable now that you just said about the Taliban and we're going to support them. I was like, you were just talking about this red pill, brother, and about being canceled. Man, it's over.
Well,
no, I know what you
man.
mean, though. Of course.
Yeah, no, but I'm
Because
saying
it's about everything's about justice.
I'm saying in as Muslims, that's who we support. You know, that we support people who are
upholding justice,
and
encourage upholding of justice, right?
Yeah.
And are true about it, and bring those people to justice that have oppressed, of course, right?
Someone's asking thoughts about Mufti Taqi Usmani tweeting in support of the Taliban. Well, that's not out of character. The Taliban are from the Deobandi school.
Wait, did he
They
actually say like?
I think he did.
I don't know.
Because it might be somebody's speculation.
I remember seeing the Urdu translation of it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I read the Urdu. My Urdu's not that good, but
Are you able to put it on the
I
screen?
can actually bring it
the
up.
translation.
Let me bring it up.
But I just want to see, like, before somebody says supporting the Taliban, like,
Mufti
obviously
Taqi
he'll be
Usmani.
very strategic about it too. I don't think he's just gonna, just say, "Hey, I support the Taliban," so everyone else supports them. I don't know if he's gonna say that either. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just out of responsibility and amana for what people say, especially scholars. So,
I think.
While
but anyways,
I pull this up, Ibrahim and Nurgul, do you guys have any closing thoughts? So I can go to sleep.
so I'm gonna go to sleep. Sorry, guys.
Well, Nurgul's on Eastern time. Ibrahim's chilling. He's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, he on the West Coast. He still got few hours left. I'm like, it's 10 o'clock here. It's 11 o'clock in Columbus.
Yeah. So I guess, well, go ahead, Ibrahim, if you want to go.
Oh, you got it.
Okay. So really, closing thoughts are, ultimately, as you guys are talking about, Muslims being on the side of justice. Again, these opportunities are, these challenges that we see in the world, they're an opportunity for those of us who are blessed. So as I had mentioned, I have an organization called Hidayah Institute, and our main mission is really trying to help the widows and orphans, those who are less fortunate, and at the same time providing some hope to the youth, whether it is training, computer labs, whatever kind of support they need. In Afghanistan, we try to provide that support, and so hopefully, you can support us, and then I would encourage you, any organization, whatever you can do, go ahead and try to help the Afghan people, because it's not, their struggle is not going to stop. A lot of them who were hungry yesterday, they're still going to be hungry tonight. A lot of the kids, I was just telling my kids, when I go over there. Sometimes I see people, all they have is a tent, and in the winter of Kabul, I don't know how they even sleep in those tents. I don't know how these kids sleep, or they have a mud hut, 1-bedroom home, and there's no central cooling, there's no air conditioning, there's no refrigerators. Now today, some of them don't even have that. So just imagine being in that situation where, at least you had a tent yesterday. Now today you don't even have a tent. So just think about, those people who are going through that. Their struggle is real. I know there's a lot of games going on when it comes to politics and the struggle of, different powerful nations again. But the people who live there, their struggle is real. Their struggle doesn't end.
Thank you for bringing it back to that, man. That really made it
Yeah, we'll
important.
share those links. You have a launch good on right now, right?
Yeah.
You have a launch good going on right now?
Yep.
That's launchgood.com/Afghan crisis and HidayahInstitute.org. I am posting it in the YouTube chat, and then we'll have it in the show notes as well. So,
Here we go.
the Rambo clip or Mufti?
The Rambo.
Here's Mufti Taqi Usmani saying the peaceful entry into Kabul, the amnesty and the guarantee of peace reminded me of the conquest of Mecca and signaled to the technologically advanced powers around the world that no power can stand before the power of faith, provided it is ready for any sacrifice. I wish we and the world of Islam could learn from this miracle. Now, I take a lot of these statements with a grain of salt because, Mufti Taqi Usmani, he's a heavyweight. I'm not saying that he just doesn't know things or he's naive or anything. I think many scholars just don't understand the world of politics and how many different angles that you have to keep track of. If he's giving his endorsement and he knows them personally, that's great. If you make taqlid of Mufti Taqi Usmani's political positions as well, then you're welcome to that. But and following him, but I would caution you that many scholars in the past have given endorsements to various groups and movements, only to be left disappointed later on. Just like we talked earlier, wait and see. Let things play out. You're not living in Afghanistan right now. You don't have to make a decision on anything, and take it from there, right? Yep. Thank you so much, brother Nurgul and brother Ibrahim.
Yeah, just I guess closing statement. I would say that like the brother said, at the end of the day, the people who really do matter are the Afghan people. It's not about the militaries or this government or that government. It's all about them, because at the end of the day, who always loses is the people, right? They're the ones who always lose. Yes, and so we should be focusing on how can we, help them. Obviously, we can make a dua for them. Any type of organization that could help them, help them out. Me personally, I'm also involved in a nonprofit that deals with the actual refugees for like the last 5 years, especially it was when the refugees were just flooding in my area. Our organization, we really, just did everything we can to make sure they had, apartments and, cars, whatever they needed. We try to, make sure they had it, because they just literally just came from a war, right? And I guess all this politics and, it's cool to talk about, and, it's cool to know about the world. But at the same time, at least for me, and as practicing Muslims, there's always a balance, right? So we don't want to invest all our time 24/7, because some people, they just go too far and stuff. They like, live, eat, sleep this stuff. But it concerns us to a certain degree, right? We're hurting because they're hurting. As Muslims, we're one body, right? We're hurting because they're hurting. But at the same time, check yourself too, because people get mixed up in whole politics talk, and all these horrible things are said and done and everything. Like, dude, just I understand you're trying to, you have your point of view and you want to help in your own way, but don't forget you have your own responsibilities. You know what I mean? Like, focus on yourself, because actually by you fulfilling your Islamic responsibilities, you're actually helping those people out, actually. And so so at the end of the day, it's all about the people, and let's do everything we can to help them, make dua for them, and we just ask Allah to guide us all, guide them. And at the end of the day, we know that everything that Allah does is for a good reason, and he only does things better. They plan, but he's the best of planners. So even though it may seem like, the Chinese have an upper hand, the Americans have an upper hand, the Taliban have an upper hand, whatever, at the end of the day, Allah always makes sure that there's justice, and his plan is the best plan. So
Jazakallah khairan. Can you just remind us of what organization that you work with as far as helping the refugees?
It's called Al Misbah. So AL dash MISBAAH, Al Misbah. And we're in Elk Grove, California, and I've been with them for 5 years. And we literally started out a garage, literally just a few care packages here and there for families that are coming in. And man, how many families do we have? We definitely have over 1,000, in different cities and counties, and we're actually kind of, and we actually have our own challenges, because we're not the only ones trying to take care of them. We actually have Christian missionaries trying to kind of take over and be.
Brother Ibrahim, guys, can we get him on an episode specifically about this, please? This is beautiful. He mentioned this about the struggles that they're going through with the refugees, and you said Elk Grove, California.
Yeah, that's where we're headquartered.
Are you cool to get on another episode just talking specifically about this, the refugee issue? And
yeah, sure, no problem.
You cool with that, guys? Let's do this, man. This is beautiful.
All right, inshallah. Yeah, we'll look forward to having you again then.
I'm glad you mentioned that at the end, man. Jazakallah khairan, brother.
Well, welcome. But it's. I'll say, and I'm pretty sure the brother Nurgul knows that nonprofits and these organizations, it always seems rosy on the outside, which is good. We're doing a lot of good, and we ask Allah to accept it from all of us. but there's so many battles inside of it. Like I was telling you before, there's Christian missionaries trying to come and take those families, right before we get to them, and so we're fighting on another front, and so it's a battle, and it's a struggle, but at the end of the day, we're doing it, of course, only for Allah, but but we're also helping the people at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Al-Misbah, ladies and gents, you heard it. And is it Al-Hidayah?
Yeah, Al-Hidayah.
Al-Hidayah.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Kind
Not
Al
Hidayah.
wasn't
Hidayah.
Just
Hidayah
Hidayah.
Institute.
Just Hidayah.
Oh, just
Institute.
Hidayah? Okay.
Just Hidayah Institute.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Jazakallah khairan. Hidayah
Oh, yeah.
Institute and Misbah. All right.
I have an institute. It's called Al Bidayah.
Al-Bidayah, wa Nihaya.
Very beautiful. I see what you did there. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap this beautiful
right.
thing up.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Help us out on patreon.com/the Mamluks. Alternatively, you can help us on paypal.com/the Mamluks. And other than that, do we have another show this weekend or no?
I don't think so.
All right. Sorry for not being so active recently. I was sick for a week or so. Sheikh Amr was, I don't know what you were doing, but
Maybe we're going to release some diaries about
we had a few issues going on.
about my summer break, and
Maybe
we're going to release a little something.
I had to
See
bite
what
my tongue
happens.
before I released a little too much information that I was not privileged to.
The diaries.
But
yes,
Sheikh Amr has been through a lot this summer.
inshallah.
But
that's why he doesn't want to
it's a story for a different day.
It's a story
inshallah.
for a different day.
We'll talk about it next time. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
It's a wrap.